Hello and welcome to today's Tech Talk webinar, Presidio's technical forum that provides a deep exploration into the industry's hottest topics. In today's session, Presidio's distinguished engineer, Brad Haas, will be discussing use cases and demos on chatbots. We do ask for you to please remain on mute and use the chat box for any questions that you may have. Additionally, at the end of the webinar, you will be receiving a feedback survey. If you could take a few minutes to complete it, you'll be qualified to receive a Presidio travel mug and a Starbucks gift card. Thank you in advance for spending this time with us today, and I am pleased to introduce you to our presenter, Brad Haas.
Thank you, Monica. My name is Bradford Haas. I am a distinguished engineer here at Presidio. I'm happy to talk to you today about chatbots. My goal today is to help reduce some of the confusion around what these things are capable of, what they can do, and help expand your imagination on what is possible for your organization and how bots might be able to help your customers or internal processes, things of that nature. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into the slides here and start speaking on this subject. I do want to mention, just give a quick overview of what we're going to do as far as the presentation goes. First, I'm going to give you a brief history of bots and how they came to be, what they are, why they're popular, and why customers are taking advantage of them today and they haven't been previously. What has changed. Then I'm going to discuss when does it make sense to actually use these things, this new technology that's available, and I'll show you some use cases. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to jump into some actual demonstrations of live examples. I do have one of them is recorded, but should be able to get the point across, and I'll be able to speak through that. It's a ServiceNow integration that we have done with the bot frameworks. So, what are bots? So, in order to answer that question, I think we need to talk first on user interfaces. So throughout history, we've had various forms of communication, and really it started out with language, right? Back in the early days of our human ancestors, just to have a conversation between two people was probably quite the challenge. So language was developed to solve that problem, followed by a series of other communication formats. So verbal communication was probably first, followed by written, or who knows, maybe it was the other way around. But at the end of the day, it was about human interaction and human communication. We moved on to communication over wide areas, right? So smoke signals probably were found many years ago, followed by when the age of electricity came along with the telegraph, telephone, computer systems, email, web, bulletin boards, if anybody remembers those from early computer days, video, and now we're kind of going back to this communication channel, or this type of communication that's really about interacting between humans again. So and at the basic level of the written version of verbal communication. So you'll probably hear me mention some of these technologies, so I'm just going to quickly talk about them real quick and why these are kind of helping the technology along. So Python and Node.js are two really popular programming platforms, languages. Python is a really good entry-level language that you can write bots in. And in fact, I'm going to demonstrate at the end of this presentation how you can create a bot in 5 minutes. So I will actually attempt to show that to you in Python, and hopefully the demonstration goes okay. You know how live demonstrations can go. So, and in fact, I'll do that with machine learning as well. So show you a little bit about how machine learning ties into everything. Node.js is basically server-side JavaScript, RESTful APIs. You might have heard of those. There's basically ways for machines to talk to each other or applications to talk to other applications. And then, we have some of our partners like ServiceNow, If This and That, Zapier, Cisco WebEx Teams, which allow for these platforms to communicate. So a lot of the examples that I'll give are with WebEx Teams, but a lot of this can be taken with any of the messaging platforms available today, like Microsoft Teams or Google Chat, for example. So when I was asked to give this tech talk today, I did what any good corporate citizen would do. I asked Google first, what is a bot? Because I know what they are. I've been working on them for quite a while, and I thought it would make sense to just say, what is it that everybody else thinks they are? So Google's description is an autonomous program on the network, especially the internet, that can interact with computer systems or users, especially one designed to respond or behave like a player in an adventure game. So let's break that down a little bit. So there's really 4 key themes that come across from this, right? We have autonomous, we've got program, interaction between computers and users, and it's designed to respond. So let's look at the autonomous piece of that. Why would we want autonomy? So really kind of breaks down to making your job easier or better, or possibly making someone else's job easier or better, or even some things' job easier or better. And some examples of that, so a bot would allow you to do things without repeating yourself as often as you might have in the past. So maybe there's certain tasks that are repetitive tasks that are mundane. You don't really need to, say you have to look something up on the internet every day at the end of the day and report it back to somebody. You could have a chat do that for you. Undesirable tasks, so things that are just mundane and just time sucks that really don't add a lot of business value in the task itself, but maybe the actual data or information that you get back is important. Also, just as far as somebody else's job making it better, maybe it's your customer, right? Maybe the customer gets some information back from you as an organization more quickly. Maybe you're doing a project with one of your business partners, and the bot is giving project status updates on a regular basis throughout the project without having to manually do that. Meeting minutes, transcribing meetings to chat, just finding information more quickly, reducing friction, querying other machines for information. Like, let's say you have a knowledge-based system that you might want to extract information from and provide that to one of your internal users. So there's lots of reasons why autonomy is important to our enterprises today, and it really comes down to making ourselves more efficient as organizations. So the way that this is implemented is through programmability. So a lot of the logic between how these bots work comes down to some of the programming languages that I talked about before, but you don't have to be a programmer to know how to do this. A lot of it is also done through open APIs and integrations. So I'll show an example or a demonstration a little bit later today where I'm using an application, a mobile app called If This Then That, that's going to integrate with Google Worksheets. So I'm going to make a change to a Google Sheet, and it's going to alert a chat room that the change has been made. So open APIs are everywhere. You're going to probably see this, or you've already seen this with a lot of your enterprise applications that you're purchasing through your vendors. They're going to tell you, we write with APIs first. It used to be mobile first, now it seems to be APIs first. So APIs is what really opens that application up to having interaction, not just with the built-in user interface that they provide for you, but it allows you to have another channel or another way to access that application or that system. And just to, the possibilities here are almost limitless as far as what you can do. So it really comes down to your imagination. And what I'm hoping to do today is inspire all of you to think about how a chatbot or how this technology can help you serve your customers, whether that be internally or externally. And really, the sky is the limit as far as what you can do. And I'm going to try and show that through the demonstrations in a little bit, but it really doesn't take a lot of time to think about what those possible use cases might be once you really see what a chatbot can do for you. And then as far as the interaction with systems, we have some changes within the technology world that are really helping to drive this. Natural language processing is probably one of the bigger ones. A chatbot is a lot easier to communicate if it's responding to you like a human. So there's a lot of frameworks that are available today that haven't been available until recently. And I think Alexa and Google Assistant are probably good examples of how a natural language ability to interact with a computer system is starting to really take off. You can also interact with a bot through commands. So if you know specific tasks or specific thing that you want a bot to do, you can send it a command and it will, do your bidding, so to speak. Like I'm going to show an example a little bit later on how you can add devices to Cisco Communications Manager just by sending it a command to add that device through the bot interface, or maybe lock a room and let's say you have an issue escalation and you have an internal room that you just want your internal team to be members of, being able to lock that room and not allow anybody else to join it, things like that. As far as communications are important, so being able to do that through commands. And then lastly, chatbots can also respond to events. They don't necessarily need a human to trigger that bot to do something. It could be an event from, let's say you update one of your applications or a database change is made on something, and you just want that, when that change happens, the bot to tell somebody about it. So let's say you have a project and you're working on this project and you need resource assigned to help you finish that project. Maybe you have an integration to Microsoft Exchange that checks calendars and says, hey bot, when's the next available engineer? Or better yet, have the bot every week say the next available engineer is so-and-so, and they'll be available on this date. So you don't necessarily have to query a bot for it to provide you information. That bot can respond to events. And as I mentioned, I have the Google Sheet integration demonstration that I'll show you a little bit later today, how I can show you how a change to a spreadsheet can actually trigger the bot to do something. And then lastly, I'll show another example of how, with a ServiceNow integration, you can open and close tickets through your ServiceNow service desk. And it doesn't have to be ServiceNow. It's just an example that we have written a bot for. So why now? What's changed? So there's been a lot of breakthroughs in the natural language understanding and processing, as I mentioned before. These are buzzwords that I think you're probably hearing on a daily basis, through the blogosphere. We saw years ago Watson, the IBM computer system, was able to play on Jeopardy and interact, and it's basically expanded these days to be able to do even more and more things. One of the things that it can do is respond to voice input and convert that to text and then process that text. So the Watson platform has become quite powerful. And behind the scenes, and not just with IBM, but with a lot of these systems, they can take data and process that information. So machine learning and artificial intelligence, probably buzzwords that you're wondering how is my organization going to take advantage of this? Well, number one, the machine learning and artificial intelligence really require a lot of data information for you to process and gain knowledge out of that and insights too. I'm actually going to attempt to show you, as I mentioned before, I'm going to build a bot that is going to use machine learning to try and give intelligent responses to conversations. So hopefully that doesn't blow up on me when I show the demo, but I want to demystify that, because I think chatbots is really one of the key areas where machine learning actually makes sense, because you can program responses, not just hard code them, like if I see this exact worded sentence respond in this way, I can actually take a data set and ingest that and say, out of the 9,900 times that somebody said hello, the response was, how are you? And I can then, with confidence, respond when somebody says hello to the bot, respond back with, how are you? Or whatever the response might be. So it's based on big data. And then I think a lot of people have Alexa, Google Assistant, or Apple Siri with these voice assistants really behind the scenes. They're just taking that voice and they're converting it to text, and they're processing that information, again, through that natural language understanding that is, the recent breakthrough that's allowing this technology to happen. And then lastly, we have these new platforms that are available to us that actually allow us to interface to these systems using chat. So WebEx Teams is a common one that we at Presidio are deploying for our customers, as well as Microsoft Teams and Slack. So all three of those have the ability to take advantage of this technology, and I'm sure there's many more that I've failed to mention here, but these are just some of the three, most common ones that we're seeing in the industry. So with all of this information, this was available to consumers for quite some time, especially Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri. So why not in the enterprise? And I think the answer is we can absolutely bring this technology into the enterprise now. So when does it make sense to deploy this technology? So I think you need to think about, how is this improving a job function? So if you create a bot just to create a bot and say, I have a bot and we're doing bots, or we're doing machine learning for the sake of machine learning, or something to that effect, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've improved your business or you've improved value to your customers. So really, what are we trying to achieve? And it goes back to those four core principles before, where, are we automating things to make somebody's job better? Are we doing things faster? Are we reducing those repetitive tasks? So you need to ask yourself, how does this application that I'm thinking of doing, make the lives of my company better? And not just for myself, but also maybe for my team or my end customer. Does it make their life better or improved? Am I able to respond with information to them more quickly? Have I created some sort of self-service ability that consumer or that customer can, take advantage of, like look up an order, for example, something like that, rather than having to provide a 24/7 hotline, for example? And does it reduce friction? Is it something that somebody's going out of the way of? So a lot of the nice things about chatbots is, I spoke a little bit about the event-driven version of a chatbot, where that chatbot receives an event from a system, and then it delivers a message to you as a receiver. So being a receiver is a nice way to reduce friction. So I just know that information is going to show up in my chat at 5 o'clock every day. I'm going to know what the status of my team is automatically. So, or how many tickets I closed in a day, things like that, without having to go somewhere else to look that information up, is a key thing that you may want to solve by using this technology. So here's just a few example use cases that we see common requests from our customer base. So Triaging's common service desk requests. This is quite common, where a company may receive thousands of tickets on a particular recurring theme or a recurring item. Maybe it's a system that they need access to, and you have to click 4 places and perform some sort of authentication with the user ID, of which they have 4 of that they can't keep track of. Maybe that chatbot could help answer those types of questions. How do I log into, or how do I access this system, and respond back, not just with text, but these chatbots have the ability to send back rich media like attachments, a Word document or a PowerPoint, or maybe a screenshot of something. Automation of issue escalations. So let's say you have an issue that somebody within your organization opens up a help desk ticket for, such and such system is down. Let's say your SQL Server system is down. The ticketing system can automatically open a chat with the relevant people who manage that SQL Server, and have them all live in a live chat with maybe their managers and the department lead that reported the issue, so that they're all on the same page throughout the issue, and then have the ability to close that out through a command and capture that chat history and put it back into your ticketing system. So that might be a good use case. Front-ending a contact center customer queue. So, we're all familiar with interactive voice response systems that we dial into every day. It's menu-based systems where it's self-service for customers. So perhaps we front-end that with a chat-based system that is programmed or has learned of appropriate responses for certain queries, and tries to answer those and triage those for you before it even gets to your customer service reps. And then if it's not able to answer the question, escalate to a human behind the scenes when we see that the bot is struggling. So give that bot some human assistance. Automation and configurations of devices, so being able to, command and control multiple devices at the same time. Maybe you want to send a command to multiple switches or routers in your organization, or in the example I'm going to show in a little bit, I'm going to actually program a telepresence unit and communication manager. Automate feedback from an external system. I spoke about that already, and improve communications within your organization. Maybe be able to send announcements to a group of people all at once, or poll them for information and then respond back with the poll results. And then last but not least, being able to publish chat spaces so that other people are aware of them, be able to join them without being invited to a chat room. So before I get into the demos, just giving you a high level of an example of what it might look like in your environment. So the bot needs to live on a server typically, or some sort of engine that's going to be able to run the code for it. And then whatever systems that it needs access to, you'll need to make sure that it's in a location that has access to that system. So in this particular example, this particular chatbot has an integration of Microsoft Exchange, Active Directory, and it can do some web publishing too. So for this one, it made sense to put it on customer DMZ. So it has access to those internal systems and is also externally available. So with that, I am going to jump into some demos. And if anybody has any questions as I go along, feel free to post them in the chat room. Monica and myself can answer them as we go or at the end of the demos. So without further ado, I am going to show you a couple examples of chatbots here. So I'm using WebEx Teams for this, and I've set up, let's see here, a chat room here, which I've invited a few chatbots to. So I have one called Space Manager and one called CCM Bot. So the first demo I'm going to show you is being able to enhance the communications or channels through Space Manager. So some of the capabilities that this has, and what I'll do is I'll send a command to the bot to ask it for some help. So I'm going to query the bot, I'm asking it for help, and it's going to give me a list of commands that it will accept. So this is a bot that accepts commands, is integrated to Exchange and Active Directory. And what it does is it allows you the ability to synchronize Exchange distribution lists to a chat room. So I'm going to show you a demonstration of that. So let's talk to the bot, and we will ask it to list the members of the Boston Celtics. So I'm querying that distribution list right now, and now the bot is actually going out to the Exchange, Microsoft Exchange system and pulling it back out. And I gave the wrong domain. So as you can see, I do have some error handling in here as well. You weren't meant to see error handling, but there it is. So Boston Celtics at presidio-demo.com, not presidio.com. So now it's querying our Exchange server that's in our demo lab, and it's going to pull a list of users within that. Okay, let me try one other thing here. The demo gods are not smiling on me at the moment. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, so I just got the list of the Boston Bruins, and as you can see, it pulled them up. And let's say I want to add them to this chat room. I can just do the same command and use add. So add spaceman, add, or better yet, I want to synchronize them on a schedule so that anytime that distribution list is updated in Active Directory / Exchange, that it will keep that in sync every 4 hours. So it's going ahead now, and it's going to add those users to the chat room, and we should see that begin momentarily here as it goes and queries the distribution list. They should be added as participants. And you can see them starting to be added. So as that goes along, I'm also going to show you that we built a web front end for this application so that you can publish these spaces to a web portal. So I'm going to go ahead and publish the space. And you have the ability to publish it internally or externally. So internally meaning to users within Presidio for this example, or it could be whatever the customer domain is, or externally, which would allow anybody from any organization to join that if they know the address of the portal. So I'm going to go ahead and publish that. And I should be able to, once that's published, go over to the application's web front end. So you can see it's been published. And if I go to that web portal and log in, there we see it, the Tech Talk bot demo. Now, because I'm already joined, I see that it's smart enough to know and recognize my user ID. But if I had never joined that space before, this could, for example, this could be published on your internal intranet site as a directory listing of chat spaces. Some of the other capabilities that we have here, I'll show you there's an admin portal that goes along with this. Which will allow you to manage as an admin the spaces that are published by your user population. If somebody tries to publish a space externally, it puts them in a queue here so that they're not allowed to be externally available until an administrator allows for that. We can see the list of distribution or the list of spaces and what distribution lists are synchronized to them. So in this case, I've got the Boston Bruins synchronized to the Tech Talk bot demo space. And then I can see all the memberships. This would be anybody who's invited this bot to a space would show up in my list. And if I saw that the bot had been invited to a chat room or a space that I don't want it to be, I can simply hit the eject button and remove it from that space. And then last but not least, the ability to send a blast message to a chat room. So this might be used for that announcement example that I gave before. So I'm going to send a message to the space. So welcome to the Tech Talk demo. Thank you for your attendance. Regards. And I can also send in multiple spaces here as well. So maybe I'll send it to myself as an individual too. So I go ahead and send that, and you can see here I got the toast message letting me know that that message was sent. And this is the space that we are doing all our commands from. The other one was my one-on-one space that I had with the bot. So there's a lot of other things that that bot can do, but I don't want to spend all the time on one bot. I'd like to show you a couple others. So the next demonstration, excuse me. I'm going to show an integration to Unified Communications Manager. So with this one, I have another bot that's been added to this room called CUCM bot. You can see that here. So if I send a command to the CUCM bot, what it will do is allow me the ability to provision a telepresence endpoint to my communication manager system. So the use case for this one was one of our customers had a large telepresence deployment. Their administrators were busy with their day-to-day operations and such, and they didn't necessarily need to be involved every time the Smart Hands person went and hung a new system on a wall and configured a space or a new room with telepresence. So we built this bot to allow those Smart Hands users to simply type in the MAC address and the name of the system and then auto-provision that at the time that that system went live without having the administrator need to be involved. We were also able to lock down these commands because obviously security is a concern, so only certain users were allowed to send commands to the bot. So that's another thing that you'd want to consider as you create these bots. So I'm going to go ahead and ask this bot what it can do for me. So again, I'm going to ask it for help. And it should send me back a syntax of what it's looking for as far as how I can tell it to do something. So you can see the syntax here, and it gives me a great example. So I'm going to probably just copy this, actually, of how to ask the bot to do something for me. So just to show you that I'm not faking you out here, this is the system before. I'm going to add an SX80 to the system. As you can see, we only have one SX80. So I'll make my app mention and then paste that command in. And I'll just change the wording a little bit so you know that it's not a pre-canned script. So my TP unit, we'll call it that. Okay, so I issue the command. And it will take a second just because it is querying the external system. It's got to send some API commands. So it's returning a response back and just validating that it has configured the system the way that I had just asked it to. So let's go ahead and check that out. So if I refresh the page here, and there we have it. So we can see I have a new telepresence unit that's been deployed to my system, which typically has quite a few things that need to be configured. All of that was templated out so that I didn't need to worry about that. So it had a template on the back end that it was smart enough to utilize. So that's the CUCM bot. And I have a few more examples before our time's up. So integration to Google Docs. I had a few issues with this one earlier today, which hopefully I don't have that issue again as I show this demo. But let's say you have an event where people are signing up and they are putting their hotel reservations into a Google Doc or something like that. Anytime a new row is added, maybe perhaps you want to update the space or the team that, you know, their travel information has been updated on that Google Sheet. So this is an if this then that integration. So if you haven't heard of that app before, you can download that at any time. And it basically allows you to create recipes to integrate multiple applications together. So in our case, the source of the if this then that is the spreadsheet, and the destination or the result is send a message to the space. So let me open up my browser and go to that Google Sheet. So here's the Google Sheet. So as soon as I add a new row to this, and again, I mentioned earlier, I was having a little bit of problem with this one. Let's see. Arrival date is today. Status is open, and I will arrive on site today. So if all goes according to plan here, I should see a message in the chat room that says a row was added to the spreadsheet, and it gives me a link to actually get back there. So I can click on that link, and it brings me right back to that sheet. So you can see I've just integrated a document edit to the space, and I've alerted the space that something's changed. So that's an event-driven bot response. So I did not ask the bot to do anything. I simply made a change to an application that I use every day, and it told my messaging platform, which is WebEx Teams in this case, to send me a message, let me know. So that's one of the examples of reducing friction. You know, I don't necessarily want to have to go out to that spreadsheet and figure out, you know, all the information that's been added to it. Just let me know when it's been updated, and I'll check it then, or when I feel like it. And the beauty is it will keep a history in the chat room anytime one of those edits is made. So the next one is, this is one that I mentioned earlier, was recorded, but this is a good demo. It's a ServiceNow integration that we did. So I'm going to go ahead and play that for you so you can see. Hopefully everyone can see this. And I know if you can't see this, Monica will be sending out the recording so that you'll have the availability, or I should say the ability to view this anytime you want by looking at the presentation. So you can see, let me just turn down the volume here. He's basically opening up a ticket and adding in the contact list of who should be notified of this ticket. So you can see added two people to that internal contact list of the ticket. And what we did here is we created a button that automatically generates a Cisco Spark, which has now been rebranded as WebEx Teams. So you'll see me talking about the two. And as soon as he clicks that, you'll see it created a new space with the incident ID as the name of this chat space, and then the members of the ticket when he added the ticket to be alerted. And then in this example, we're going to send a few messages. Let's say you're working on that ticket or you're having an interaction with the user and the help desk personnel who's working on that ticket, and they're chatting with each other to resolve that ticket. And then ultimately, you can close the ticket by sending an @message to close the ticket. So here you can see said ServiceNow close the ticket. And the bot responded back saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and log all the messages and close out this space. So now that the incident's been resolved, the chat room is closed and the ticket's updated with an attachment here that shows the chat log. And all that history and information that happened back and forth within that chat room is now attached to your ticketing system. So just as simple as that. And you can see that the status is now says resolved, and that's because we told the bot to go ahead and close the ticket. So that is an example of how we can integrate with your external systems or ticketing systems to just make yourselves more efficient and add a little bit more value to how you're interacting with your customers or your user population. And now for the grand finale. Hopefully I can do this without having it explode. I'm going to attempt to code a bot in 5 minutes. I know we're right here at the end of our time. And again, I mentioned earlier, please feel free to ask questions in the chat space. I'm going to attempt to code a bot with machine learning within 5 minutes. Now, I am going to cheat a little bit because I do have some of the code that I'm just going to cut and paste here. So I'm going to open up a code editor that I use, which is called Microsoft VS Code. I'm going to write this in Python. So first things first, I have a library that I'm using called Chatterbot that is going to create the bot instance without a lot of code. So I'm going to do this in less than 40 lines of code. So I'm going to instantiate that chatbot by creating the bot instance, chatbot, and then I'm going to add some parameters to that bot. And I'm going to cheat here and cut and paste these. Hopefully you don't hold that against me. So you can see, I'm going to say I'm looking for the best match. I'm going to set the responses. If I have multiple responses, I'm going to send random responses. And as a tiebreaker, if I have more than one response that looks similar or has the same score, I'll randomize that response. And then rather than integrate this to WebEx Teams, Slack, or Microsoft Teams, I'm going to just use the terminal here just for ease of demonstration. Okay, so what we need to do next is train the bot. So I'm going to add the commands here. So this is the machine learning aspect here. I basically am pointing the bot to train itself off of a list of calls and responses. So in our case here, I have a request and response library that's already pre-built with the English language. And now I just need to give it the ability to talk to me. And to do that, I'm just going to say, I'm going to take an input, and then I'm going to respond with the bot getting a response. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now I'm going to run it. And now you can see it's looking at these files. They're in a format called GAML, which is, I can show you as we're waiting for the bot to train itself. So it's going through a list of libraries, basically, to train itself. Those libraries look sort of like this. Say, you know, I have if I hear the words hello, an appropriate response is hi. Or if I hear the words hi, an appropriate response might be hello. Let's say somebody says greetings. You know, a common response might be, or I'm sorry, hi, how's it going? A common response might be good. So, or how are you doing? The response might be good. So the idea being, if I had enough, my source data here is not big data by any means. So the responses that I get back from the bot may not be all that intelligible. So we'll see what happens here. But it's basically training itself and saying, you know, how would I respond if I see these words? So let's see. Okay, it's finished training. So I'm going to just expand my window size here. And I'm just going to say hello. And the bot was smart enough, as you saw in that library before, it knew that the word greetings was an appropriate response. And I could say, how are you? That's good to hear. I am happy for you. Sometimes you get some really interesting results from this. And the other, that's interesting. I didn't know computers dreamed. So you can see it's, yeah, so the bot it's trained itself in such a way that, you know, it's really coming up with some interesting stuff here. But the interesting thing about this is that it's continuously training itself. So every time I enter in a new phrase and I respond to one of its phrases, it ingests that and adds it to its library. So let's say I have a use case, and I'm just about done here, and I want to add some specific commands that are, you know, common requests within my company. So I'm going to add a little bit more training here. So let's say I want the bot to tell me, you know, can you help me install a bot, or can you help me with WebEx Teams? And I'm going to just comment out the old training data because we've already trained on that. That's another thing. You don't have to continuously train. I can comment this out. I've already trained on the English library, so I'm just going to do some training on these two phrases here. So this is the request, and this is my response that I would like the bot to reply back to. So I'm going to go ahead and train the bot to do that. You can see it just ingested that list of request and response. So now if I ask the bot, can you help me install a bot? There you go, it responded back, yes, please contact your Presidio account team. Or, can you help me with WebEx Teams? Yes, WebEx Teams is a great place to learn to code. So As you can see, I didn't put a ton of effort into this. I was able to get an intelligible, somewhat intelligible conversation out of a bot in less than 5 minutes. Now, obviously, there's, if we're talking about ingesting a knowledge base or something like that your corporation already owns or has access to, there may be a little bit more to it. And I used a light, very, very lightweight version of machine learning here. But I just wanted to show you that machine learning is a real thing. It's not just a buzzword, and it does have applications with chatbots. And with that, I think I'm at the end of my time here, so I wanted to thank you for joining. If you have any questions, I think we can open it now if you want to unmute yourself or ask questions, or if you want to ask them in the chat room, I'd be happy to answer them over the next few minutes. And as I mentioned, Monica will send out the link to the recording to this, as well as the PowerPoint presentation for you to have access to later on. So thank you.